Trudeau announces plans to more than double size of NATO development in Latvia, while Canada lags behind NATO spending and has a hard time just equipping its forces. This is the Great White North Report. So today, Trudeau decided, and his government decided to add 1,200 troops to Latvia, the Baltic country, and it could take 3 years to complete. Probably because we don't have 1,200 soldiers to send over, and they're very ill-equipped. Not too long ago, it came out that Canadians were like buying Canadian-made equipment from like the Danes, and that was much better than what they're being issued back home. This was part of a plan laid out as part of Canada's strategy to lead a brigade in the region. Currently, I think we have 1,100 soldiers in Latvia right now as part of the NATO Brigade. And the government's going to commit $2.6 billion in funding over 3 years, but $1.4 billion of that was announced in the 2022 federal budget. So they haven't even spent 2022 money yet. And they're going back and dipping in that fund. This is good in a lot of ways because it helps us, because we're joining a dozen other countries from across NATO, cooperating, training, and working alongside each other, learning valuable lessons from each other that make collective defense stronger, according to Trudeau. In a way, that's correct, because you gotta remember, NATO is a hodgepodge of countries. Most of them speak a different language and use different military texts, as well as different equipment. By training alongside them, you get even like signals and call signs, things like that people don't think about are all different. The military language. By training together, you work out a military language that helps in case of emergencies. So Canada and Latvia signed an agreement Monday, a so-called roadmap for creating the NATO Brigade. Currently, 1,000 Canadian Armed Force members are serving in Latvia as part of the multinational battle group that was established in 2017 to deter Russian aggression in the region. So we're going to increase that to 2,200. Our biggest problem is we're stretched thin manpower-wise, which is probably why it's going to take 3 years. One way we can increase our military, other than we can increase pay, free housing, like not houses, but free housing in apartment complexes. That would be a good way to go, as long as you're serving, and depending on your family size. We can also add free education or add a bonus. Serve 5 years, get one year free. So you're getting paid for 6 years to serve 5 years. Or serve 4 years, get a fifth year bonus. You gotta dangle carrots in front of people to get them to serve in the military. Get people who are serving jail time to serve in the military instead of serving in jail. Like, for example, not all criminals, obviously, but for example, someone who was drunk and accidentally lost control of their vehicle and accidentally killed somebody. They're still going to go to jail for manslaughter. Even though they just ruined their life and the lives of a lot of other people, why not put that into some kind of use? Instead of sitting in a jail cell, have them go serve our country. Do something positive. Trudeau also went on to say that it will reinforce and enhance Canadian land, maritime, and air capabilities and support special operations in Central and Eastern Europe. Pretty hard to do when we don't have the equipment. But he's going to buy and pre-position critical weapon systems in the Baltic country. Instead of pre-position, we don't even have anything pre-positioned here in Canada. Highlighted the intelligence and cyber warfare help it is providing to Latvia as well. And it keeps going on. So last month it was announced that Canada would deploy a squadron of Leopard II main battle tanks, 15 tanks in total. About 130 personnel would join the mission starting this fall. Considering that we already sent some tanks to Ukraine, we don't have a lot of tanks left in Canada. We don't have enough tanks to cover our country. So it's interesting what he's sending over to Latvia but not spending to upgrade in Canada. Which leads to Canada trying to broaden what counts. Canada ranks among the lowest military spenders in NATO, and it's quietly and consistently lobbied major NATO allies for months to expand the definition of what it can include under military alliances defense spending benchmark. So obviously we want to bring that down. Wants to include what the country spends on space, cyber, and artificial intelligence research has been an important topic. I think every country does that almost, because we're having a hard time reaching that 2% benchmark. And we're trying to expand that definition to cover of what's covered by the 2% benchmark, meaning we're trying to cheap out of it. The response from Washington has been a flat no, obviously, because the United States spends most. So we spend 1.29% of GDP on defense. far less than the current suggested goal of 2%. And it's obvious. Our Navy is now a coastal Navy. Our Air Force is obsolete and needs to be replaced. We need new tanks. And we need new equipment across the board. So they're trying to get what we spend every year on the Canadian Space Agency, as well as the cyber threat landscape and AI research, to be included in that. But other countries do the same thing. If they push that through, then the GDP thing will probably go up to 3%. Either way we look at it, we got to stop being so cheap. I don't need to support the BLM or the National Council of Muslims in Canada or something like that. I don't need to support those groups myself. All the woke organizations that get federal money, I don't need to support those. I'd rather put that money in our defense. But then Canada also condemns the use of cluster munitions following the U.S. decision to send weapons to Ukraine. They're already using it anyway. Both the Russians and the Ukrainians are using cluster munitions. It's basically an artillery shell that drops off all sorts of little bomblets. And it's quite effective in trench warfare. The problem is Canada seems to want Ukraine to fight this war with one hand tied behind its back. Many countries ban the use of cluster munitions, but in reality, if you're in a war, you need to use everything possible. I wouldn't go as far as nuclear weapons because that's not going to help either side. It could lead to bigger things, but cluster munitions, in a war where the Ukrainians are starting to retake territory and measuring success at hundreds of meters to up to 3 kilometers, is not exactly fast. It's taking a lot of time for the Ukrainian counteroffensive. They're doing it slowly and methodically because the Russians have prepared defense in depth. And cluster munitions are a way to break up trenches and break holes in the line. So condemning the use of cluster munitions is just a joke. I want the Ukrainians to win their war, take back their country. We have to use cluster munitions to do it, so be it. I draw the line at nuclear weapons and chemical warfare. But anyway, Canadians out there, let me know what you guys think. Is Trudeau's plan feasible? What can we do to increase our military? Leave comments in the comment section. Until next time, this has been the Great White North Report.